Hey everyone, how's it going? Luke from A Taste of AZ. On today's episode, we've got the dudes from Arizona Wilderness. They're some of our favorite people. If you've not been to Arizona Wilderness before, they've got some of the state's best beers, some amazing burgers, and even duck fat fries. They're absolutely delicious. Make sure you like the video below and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's jump into it.
So we're going to attempt to do the impossible, and that is to tell the story of Arizona Wilderness in 60 minutes or less. So are you guys ready?
All right, it's 2:12. Go.
Yeah. So dudes, thanks for joining us. This is A Taste of AZ. I know you guys have been on Tap That AZ several times, but first time on A Taste of AZ. So welcome.
We're excited to be here.
That we
Excellent.
are.
Excellent. I see you guys are both resting in your lovely homes.
Yeah, COVID's created a home office need.
Yeah, I take care of my plants, and they take care of the air I breathe.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And what are you drinking, Pat? I'm always interested in what you're drinking. It looks like a big jar of like vinegar or something.
Yeah. I've actually, this is part of COVID stuff. I've been getting really into making teas and kombuchas. So I just maneuver back and forth between those items generally. And kombuchas are a very interesting one because you can ferment any kind of sugar. So there's a lot of different options there, and it's very easy. I mean, if you can boil tea, you can make kombucha. So yeah, I'm into gut biome stuff. You guys know that.
Absolutely, man. You were excited. I made the third attempt at my jar of sauerkraut. And John, I'm pretty sure I made 6 gallons of this.
Oh, that was well, the thing is, you got to use a full head of cabbage, so it's going to be a shitload.
Yeah, right? I think I used 2. I think there were 2 in there. So
okay,
I made one of our first chefs create sauerkraut for our food menu from spent grain. I'll never forget that. I wanted the lactobacillus was growing on the grain in our grain room and it worked. It worked well. It's good sauerkraut.
Really? Nice.
Yeah, but that's when you're a small boutique kitchen, and that's part of our history that you want to hear about, right?
Well, and that's how we used to sour our beer. Kettle sour was that grain just floating around in the room.
Yeah.
Dude, there's so many little intricacies of that, right? I remember when we did the episode with, I think it was Jared Valdir, and John, you said, name a beer on that, and there's a story behind it. And that's what I love about you guys. And legend has it, right? It started in your garage in Arizona here, but it doesn't start there, right? You're not from Arizona.
Right. Well, real quick to expound even further on what I told Jared is, if you go into any brewery, if it's an entrepreneur or a small business owner, you can point to anything on any wall in any location, and there's a story. That's what's great about small business is everything matters. Everything compounds upon itself and is part of what becomes the intrinsic value of a company, this value that you can't put in an algorithm. And we've seen we're about to hit our 7th year, and we're very proud of that. And our intrinsic value in the community is not based on our sales and our growth standards. It's the value that everything matters. So it's just to take that one step further on that, point to anything in the brewery. It's crazy. You can point to an electrical outlet. I guarantee we have 10 stories of how we shocked ourselves putting that in, and But my background comes from the Midwest, where you're from, Eric, in Ohio, in a little town called Ashland, and I got to live that small town life where the time goes by slower. I think some people in those small towns have more thinking time, and they get to dream bigger. They develop a dream quicker than big city people who are really. Big cities all about defense, defending yourself against all the activity around you and all the ideas around you. But I got to live that life where my mom would take me out to the blueberry farms and give the farmer $5 extra because she knew I'd engorge myself like Willy Wonka. The blueberry girl. Really family value kind of growing up. My dad was a pastor, and I got to see a lot of the small town things. You actually knew 10% of the town. You actually did know your neighbor because you probably walked over and actually did get milk from them. It wasn't like old timey stuff. It was still the 90s, but it did set the tone for why I think John Muir, Aldo Leopold, even Hemingway, why they're so, Tolstoy's of the world, Thoreau's of the world, they're so effective because they came from small towns generally, either from England or the Midwest, and they had the idea of the West in their mind, this grandiose idea. So when I drove out here, I can really relate to the mass consumer that we have, which is a Midwesterner moving to the West, and that idea of the West. But my concern, I know Pat's concern, is we've lost a little of that here in the concrete jungle, where you just put some 2x4s and stuccos up and call it homes. And I don't know that Phoenix represents the West that it once did. So what Wilderness represents is, both Pat and I, Pat grew up here and in this, got to see this concrete jungle blow up and kind of become what it is. And benefit from the stucco revolution. And I got to drive here and literally see the from Gallup, New Mexico to Flagstaff, the first transition, and the eyes wide open. I've never seen this before. I was waiting for swirls and heat, get to Flagstaff. It's August 2002 when I did this, and the billowing monsoons are electrifying the air, and you're like, it's 62 degrees. What's worse, this heat? And then that 2-hour drive south. I get to relate to a lot of our consumer to understand that their mind was completely blown when they got here. So I think that's part of the story that I'm able to tell with Wilderness, is I get that this is a dream that the Western desire is built upon. It's really built into our American society, is the West is this dream. And I think Wilderness can represent some of keeping that true, as the Wilderness Act of '64 says, untrammeled by man, unkempt nature, keeping that true. So that's, Wilderness came years later after that move, came from a backpack that I walked into that sign that says welcome to, it was actually the Chiricahua Wilderness, if I remember correctly. And it was, you walk by this invisible line that no longer is allowing human interaction to gain anything from it. It's only you're a visitor, and it's like, wow, Congress passed that. That seems like a theme for a beer. My landscape photography is all about showing. It's, as selfish as photography can be, it's very selfless too, where you're literally just getting a photo to show people. And it was just all part of, I want to be a part of this landscape, bringing home a message to people. And at the time, the craft beer revolution was pretty hot, and John Palmer has his book still, and I'd recommend it to any home brewer, any non-home brewer who wants to understand the science. Very digestible.
What's the name of the book?
John Palmer, How to Brew.
Okay.
I think a lot of breweries started with John Palmer, How to Brew, and it brought home the creative science and understanding what yeasts are actually doing and how to treat the yeast. It allowed me to diversify my knowledge.
Yeah.
Again, I'm talking from 2002 now to 2010. So there's 8 years of me progressing into the Wilderness guy that I became, and the beer person I became. Obviously we all have a beer story, but my dad, as a pastor, would drink Sierra Nevada Pale Ale respectfully with dinner, never get drunk. That was his whole thing, is drink it with dinner. But that's where I also, in those years, also found beers like that to lead me to the next. And then I became as inquisitive as the next consumer. So we were able to sell to that consumer because we were involved. Just like the drive out, I feel like my drive is very similar, driving past valleys of these new beers and, wow, look at this greatness. And so that's what inspired me to turn it into a business. We did Kickstarter, and that's where about the time I asked Patrick to come along, because I realized the need for operations, and making beer is no job for someone who doesn't want to do it, and brewing is difficult. It's a challenge, and only the toughest can survive. And Pat was surviving doing it. And so I got to tell the story where Pat set up the operations of the brewery. And turns out that we're both generally faces of the brewery, and we have our own vision of Wilderness. And Kickstarter came 2012, and we were able to be successful with that. And what that did was generate the first ravenous fan base. What any entrepreneur should be aiming for is ravenous fan base to get you going.
Yeah.
And I was able to, that's really where I sold Pat, I was able to brew a beer like Refuge, which still is on our board today, with these new, I guess, sophisticated, brewing network podcast, the first ever podcast, apparently. He had a show in California that would allow us to go deeper into understanding sulfates and water compounds and yeast, the deep dive, right? And so I was doing that in the garage, and Pat came over and noticed that some of these beers were possibly more, they just had a little more currency to them than the beers he was getting used to brewing. And he said these are
meaning like
the value of these beers. They're hot for a reason. This tastes better than what I'm used to tasting.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
They're a little more relevant. They're relevant. The West Coast IPA was booming, and I was brewing the newest editions of these West Coast IPAs based on books and podcasts and visits to other breweries.
Yeah.
Or Pat finally came down and said, "Hey, that's a good beer. I'm interested to hear more." Then the radical game plan of we're going to support local kind of. When I watch our Kickstarter video, I laugh because, you see this young boy who has no clue. Yeah, I had a window cleaning business, but, has no clue what you're getting into. But I did say the things that we're still doing today, and that's why I'm probably more proud at our 7-year. I think entrepreneurialism is a failure if you look at your initial videos and you're not doing those things anymore. It's like Google changed their whole format from do no evil, right? To now it's like it's acceptable to be evil. And I think that's embarrassing. I think for Pat and I, it's good to look back at a video 9 years old and say, hey, we're going to look at farmers and the consumer, and we're going to be in the middle of that, connecting those two. I think I said it that way. And, that leads us into opening, and where we're at day one was obviously different than now. Maybe Pat can take that side, but that's kind of the background of how we got to day one, where we also didn't know shit about shit.
Well, you said that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pat. What were you saying?
No, it's so true. It's so true. I think
you thought you knew all kinds of shit, though.
Nah, I don't think so.
I knew.
I think we knew we were scratching on something that was, a little bit before its time for Arizona. I think we were really pushing the boundaries there, and we knew we were on to that side of things, and that we were adaptable and gunslinging and moving at a rapid rate. And now we have to reestablish that at times, that we're okay with taking risks and innovating and pursuing avenues that may not have charted pathways to them. And it's very challenging for our team sometimes, because a lot of our team members are risk averse. They're not interested in that style of engagement in a pursuit of whatever initiative you're pursuing. So,
but it's good to have them, right? Like you need them, right? You need
good counterbalance, but we didn't get here by just filling up the coffers and trying to protect it. So
sure.
Yeah, I think that's where John and I, we did connect initially in that yin yang counterbalance situation, because I think I would have, especially initially, fallen more on the protection side, very much operational linear thinking, which is, I think, innate to the way that my brain works. And so that's where, we talk about energies, and John and I had this kind of fateful moment where we were being associated with each other due to a similar look that we had at the time and still do, where people thought we were the same person, and it wasn't a choice that we were seeking each other out. We were just drawn to each other. And, my background is the suburbs. It is the stick houses and the overbuilt infrastructure and ledges of those houses, where my mother owned a retail shop and sold items into those spaces, all of that big stucco, keep up with the Joneses of the suburbia. Everyone has the same house. That was the lifeblood of what got me to college and help propel our family in that time. So I understood the growth cycle of, real estate in Arizona and the general flow of that space. And that's what drew me to craft beer, was to try to push against that. Because generally you do want to kind of reject the norm of what's been put in front of you when you grow up.
Yeah.
And I know for John, it'd probably be to reject some of the ideals of some of his life in Ohio. It's something that I think you want to prove your own self-worth and break out of your situation, the coziness of what you could do forever. You could stay within a box and stay there. But I think we're both people that are averse to that ideology and being safe at all times, not experiencing things. So, I came from that somewhat traditional brewing background of production where you're turning valves and you're replicating the same thing and you're just grinding it out and getting it done. And I think John needed that at the time, seeing what business was throwing at him. So it was very easy for me once I finally drew my guard down, which typically takes a while. I think John hacked away at it with a sword for a while.
With intent, John? Like with
I worked way harder. I worked way harder on Patrick than my own wife.
Yeah. Yeah, I was probably harder than Justice to get on board.
Yeah.
But for good reason. I at the time was at a brewery that was cranking, and for me, I was a pusher that was just trying to push my way in the door for many years. I mean, it was my dream to just get my foot in the door and make something happen. Graduating.
Any brewery? Any brewery specific?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I worked at Gordon Biersch in college, but I just wanted to get in the back. I wanted to touch and feel, and I'm a hands person. I gotta put my hands on it to understand it.
Okay.
And the opportunity arose, and I took it over at Santan, and we saw astronomical growth in the industry. And I took that based on, you graduate from college in 2008, 9, there are no jobs. It's like graduating in COVID. Like, what would you do? You just go do something.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Learning a trade was essentially, and I love beer, man. I didn't grow up with the family that drank one Sierra Nevada at dinner. I grew up in the family that drank 10 Sierra Nevadas every night.
Yeah.
For a gallon of wine. And so I did that through the first half of my life, going to ASU and homebrewing and drinking disgusting beer that we were making.
But still drinking it. Like, all right, man, we have a lot of money. Yeah.
We would plug our nose or whatever we had to do. And as long as we just didn't get too stoned to remember that we were boiling, because we did that too, forgot the boil was going, and then 6 hours later, you're like, that's just like a reduction syrup. That's not even beer anymore.
And Patrick just named the Fermentation Science Center for ASU's, program for fermentation. Like that.
Yeah.
That's it.
He started it.
But anyways, yeah, I was able to throw myself in and have practical skills and derive some logic and some orientation to the direction that John was going with his brewing prowess. The first batches of Refuge that I tasted and Superstition Coffee Stout that was the epiphany moment that sold me. And I said, okay, I could, there's something here. There's something real here. Along with going on our first backpack and having some nostalgia elements to my childhood. I was sold into the idea very, very much so, and really had nothing to lose working graveyard shift for very low wage. So we pursued that together, and that creativity banter from John and me absorbing that and then applying that to a practical use has, since evolved into a kind of dual relationship of creativity, though we do yin and yang fall on those sides, where I probably fall more yin and John's more yang, but we alternate back and forth as the business progresses. So, I think that first couple of years, John just needed a warrior next to him because we were in fight or flight mode. Every single minute was fight or flight.
For years, right?
Yeah, like, are the checks going to bounce? Is this thing going to make it through?
Yeah.
And then that number one new brewery in the world thing hit, and it was quite a situation. Maybe you can get into that a little bit, John, and lay out your emotion.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah, Eric, you like going that direction? I think Pat's got us at a good spot because obviously the first raising money and things, we were underfunded. Yeah.
Can I just want to clarify something, and I want you to cover this if this is accurate. But was it originally going to be in Queen Creek? Was the location originally?
Yeah, this was well before Pat was involved.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the first town that I approached, and it didn't work out over parking agreements and stuff in Queen Creek. Since it's split up, and it's now Santan Valley and Queen Creek. But at the time, I just don't think that they were. I've heard from them since saying that sucks.
Okay, right.
we should have done that. But when I called the town of Gilbert, there was a definite like, hey, I want to show you this heritage district downtown Gilbert.
Yeah.
And obviously, anyone who's familiar with anything between Gilbert and Guadalupe and Gilbert and Elliott, back then that was a pipe dream. Luis Gonzalez had a restaurant there called Gonzo's, and it was called the Grain Belt, and Joe's was there, but it was just kind of like the old West with a raven flying overhead with the sun and a tumbleweed, and it really did feel that way. And we still chose the location, even though there was so much promise. And even in hindsight, seeing it's a mile north of me, I still think we made the right decision in the location, because you want full control and authority of your culture. And I don't want to be part of someone else's culture. And when you're neighbors with somebody that's selling, bruschetta for cheap and wine, then you need to match that.
Well, we needed the bagel drive-through. That's what we needed.
Yeah. The building itself has so much,
but I'm in. Yeah.
Well, we took over a bagel drive-through. That's why this is why this all works.
There was some architectural feats that would have only been possible due to the fact that there was a drive-through connected in the adjacent.
Yeah, if you go in the back of the house, you realize a lot of our assets are stored in a rent-free zone. And that drive-through presented that for us. So you can store a lot of things outside, distro coolers and all these things where you're not paying rent for a brew pub, because you need people sitting down in those square footage areas, eating and paying revenue. So that's the building. But the first 6 months was just getting people who could come in and fill, warm bodies, some talented, but everyone knows this when you start, you need some warm bodies. You do. And the ones who can make it through, great, but rarely do they, because things need to shift quickly in a small business.
You're talking about hiring staff on at the beginning when you're opening.
Yeah. Okay. And so we got
to take into consideration the industry at the time was burgeoning.
Yep.
There was a new brewery opening every other week, so you would get the people that were excited to, what's the new hot thing to work at, and I can make a bunch of money there, and then they'll on to the next one.
A few of the people we hired that day, Eric, were own breweries now, or have worked. They're well developed in their career, and maybe we were a mere stepping stone. But it was cool to think about the group that we had day one. But day one was definitely us just desperately getting going. There was mortgages on the line, foreclosures in the works, divorces.
I say you had to, right? You had
it wasn't positive. Everyone asks day one, were you so proud of this? And it's like, I don't know. It's almost like making out of trench warfare. Sure, I'm glad I got out of this, but
lucky not to have all our limbs blown off.
Yeah, and so we get to that first 6 month mark, and I get a text message. An email from McKellar. Mikkel himself, who in hindsight, now a great friend, and I understand him completely, and we've traveled the world together. But then that was quite a, momentous feat, this palpable energy where you're like, you want me to send congratulations, the best new brewery in the world. You want me to send beer to your bars. What?
So had you met him? Had you met him at any festivals or anything?
No.
This was just he cold called you, man. I mean, you got cold called by McKellar, dude. That's a big deal.
We were like summoned by the Danish king.
yeah. Dude, that's a big deal.
I mean, we had been to one festival, Strong Beer Fest. It wasn't like festivals then were nothing like they had gotten to. I don't know how many international beer festivals there even were. So you
get this email. You didn't, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I knew who he was. He was well established as this like enigma brewer, gypsy or ghost or whatever the term you want to call. But you knew that he was one of the founding kind of representatives of the new craft beer movement. And so when he said that, I was kind of confused, like, what does this mean? And then social media was different back then. You didn't get the ding, ding, ding. But, I don't know what I did. I logged into Facebook, I guess, and said, well, people are saying congratulations. And then KTR emails us, can we get on and talk about the award you won? That was more of my strong suit of taking energy and exploding it, and certainly did that. We were on every news source possible for the next week, and some of them embellished it to best brewery in the universe, best brewery in the world, and best new brewery in the world is based on an algorithm that Rate Beer came up with. And we got to know the Rate Beer team years later, and we talked about, we feel good about it. It's not a big, I think at the time beer was like baseball. Literally, like fandom was brewmasters were like pitchers or star batters, and
I'm sure they have cards somewhere. They probably have brewers cards.
Things have changed, and we're all things have changed. We're all trying to fight the good fight in entrepreneurship now, but it was it propelled us into that energy level, that realm that we had heard about, and so the major problem was that was operations. The gears turned. Operations is a way to get a product out the way that you intend it, and then repeat that. And we just didn't have that. We didn't have that. We were still in a mode of building. We were really writing a business plan as we went, though we had one. It didn't include a full-fledged menu. We started getting to the food side, from 16 to 30 to 30 to 50 employees pretty quickly over that time period. And Pat and I had a different struggle then, and the struggle was to go from opening to a small business, and that those were years that I there's some proud moment there. It's like any great business story. There's ups and downs, there's good and ugly, there's blood and there's tears, and there's probably a smile on there too. But it was like there's so much to do every day. And other breweries were suffering the same battles we were. If you were becoming successful, your whole thing was to fight, quote unquote, fight the man, fight the big business world. Well, that's the dumbest thing ever. That's such a stupid philosophy to have. We're here against the big guys. The big guys are successful because the operations they've created. So we, over from that 6 month in period to 2 years past that, we really, really, really just rode with the gas pedal on full. Rarely hit the brakes, ran into everything. And I don't think I don't want to, we did what we had to do. Let's put it that way. We did what we had to do to get here, but I don't think some people saw the hardships. I remember some of the overrated topics and stuff. And it's like, man, I don't think people realize how hard Pat and I work still to this day, but specifically then hands-on. I mean, it was a grind that I just don't recommend to anyone, but it did get us here, and that's our story. And then starting at year 4, we're in year 7 now. Year 4 is when we really dialed in the idea that we care a lot about repeating the process, and we want to find good people. And I love seeking good people and finding their energy and where they would, kind of go.
Yeah, and I think that was a crucial key step for John and I in the maturation of the whole process. Was starting to work on the business and not in the business. And we learned that. We took some consulting help. You do what you got to do at the beginning, and you can sleep on grain bags a few times, and that's okay. But, the business owners that find them perpetually doing that forever, it's just not healthy. It's not a good way to run an entity to, I'm the hostess and your bartender, and I'm the brewer and the owner and the accountant.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your
So
time
we
free, but it's valuable.
Yeah, we focus pretty heavily from year 4 to now on finding the right people from all the revenue sources, all the revenue centers, including the brewery. Obviously, we've had a really, really good run at head brewers, and the Chase era was a strong one. Before him, it was Patrick. Before that, it was Chris Rogers. But each time we've gotten better at the things that I think are super important, which is, interviewing isn't just a bunch of questions. It's, do you align with who we are as a company? And we've gotten better at that. Now we have Eric at the helm, and Eric is an incredible head brewer, and we have Justice at the helm, one of the best head of restaurant operations, who's overseeing the whole food program, and David, our chef, and Anais and Carly on retail and marketing. And you realize that you can be passionate about beer, but you should be passionate about people. And Pat and I are very passionate about finding the right people now and putting them in the position that makes them successful. And generally those people, like Andrew, our brand new sales rep, he's passionate about beer. And so he aligned with our passions and passionate about Arizona. And that's really the role that we play today, is guiding the ship, laying the guardrails, paving the road, and saying, get out there and drive as fast as you want. We don't want to micromanage you at all. We want you to succeed. So
I think that key crucial step for John and I was bringing Justice on board. We found ourselves just slamming our heads against the wall with the restaurant side of things, which was, I'd worked in restaurants for 7-8 years, and John had worked banquets, but by no means were we restaurant operators. And there was a lot of learning that went into kitchen infrastructure, line builds, food costs, labor percentages, all of these elements that they can pull a little bit of the creativity out of the beer side and the brand and the vision. And we were sucked away from that focus quite a bit because of the restaurant. And once Justice came on board, it gave us the ability to take a step back and start to consider the growth of the company in the future. And then the second big move on that personnel front would have been Charles bringing in our COO to get, organize and control the financial obligations and some of those elements that we would both, we wouldn't be truthful if we said we understood lease negotiations for multi-million-dollar build outs. And, some of these elements are just so complex, and there's the businessmen are trying to, cut your throat while you're sleeping. And you're like, wow, man, this isn't really just about creativity and beer anymore.
Well, I was gonna say, you were talking about the people. That's one thing that I've always noticed about you guys is like the people that are there. They're just the right fit, right? I mean, like Anais was she's a climber, right? And I mean, she just fits in with that wilderness culture, and I don't know, man. That's the hardest thing about running a business, let alone a restaurant, right? Is having everybody with that same vision of, rather than like, I'll do this for a couple months and then move on. Right. Sure. And the key there is understanding that business is a revolving door, not a revolver. Sometimes it is. See how, what a Freudian slip, and one bullet goes in. No, it's a revolving door. And as that door spins, some employees don't come back out, and hopefully a new one's coming in. You got to get good at that revolving door. You want people to stay, but everyone has their own life. They have their own vision of their own life. And there just is time to move on. There is. Yeah. Now, I will say that we pride ourselves on this. We call it our management executive team, the office team that you guys have gotten to know, the Anaises, Carly's, the Erics, and you know them. And I would really like to show them to the world more, because I think they're super intelligent people all coming together in this diverse fashion. But that revolving door,
it shouldn't just turn and spit out new people. You should be at the center of that revolving door to say, you align, get in here. Let's see if you fit our system. And alignment's big. Now, I think our statement, Wilderness' statement, hasn't changed much over the years, but how we present our statement is, and what we want the state to be a better world tomorrow, kind of, local, all those hashtags that we have become popular. We've done, I think, a better job of fully finding, one, we're inspired by the state of Arizona. That's the first basis. And we find out if you're generally going to work well with us, because you're going to go an extra step for this process of protecting and loving Arizona. You're going to be finding yourself in situations that could be completely made easier by machinery or a cheaper product from Oregon or whatever that may be. You're going to need to love Arizona to go that one step further. And then, do you like small businesses? If you tend to find yourself eating out at Chili's and Applebee's and Macaroni Grill a lot, you might not like small business as much as you think, because you want the same thing every time. You got to be willing to accept that when I go down to whatever, name your favorite small business, it might not be the same every time. And there might be discrepancies. That's what working for one is like too. So we align with people immediately that way. Eric,
people have to be adaptable in that state, where there's not necessarily a booklet that states every single outcome of what you're supposed to do at every moment. So, and John and I have had this philosophy and brought in this somewhat Patagonia style, where we do want to hire people that are based in the, cultural values of what we're pursuing. And, and those individuals are also going to bring some of what they're inspired to the table. And so we put a rough, substrate of what their position is, and then we allow them to deviate into what they're passionate about. And that puts its imprint onto our company in the end. And we prefer that because it's not about just what John and I want or what we're pursuing. We don't want that kind of dictatorship. It's more of this kind of selfless evolution of what the entity is, and it kind of vacillates and flows different directions based on who's bringing that energy to the table. And then when they move on, then they've left an imprint, and that's okay, and then they'll go do that, somewhere else. And so I think that's where that respect comes into play, and that empowerment. We want to bring people in and empower them to pursue and succeed in their own manner. At times that can backfire a little bit, because you're less productivity oriented at times. Though if you empower people and you allow them to pursue things they're passionate about, you'll find that their productivity would actually be higher than if they were put into a state where they were forced via pressure to produce. And so that's a philosophical evolution that we went through, because now it's less about reacting to the arrows that are being fired over the wall. It's more about exploring the open seas. And so all of these personalities is the balance that's constantly evolving. It's that we call it like the pendulum, as it's kind of swinging back and forth. And so the idea would be to keep it somewhat in the middle. It moves back and forth a little bit, but it doesn't swing too far one way or the other, because the base of that clock could tip over. And we've swung it a lot of different directions and found that we need people to balance each other out, some of those energies. So,
one of the things that stands out the most to me with you guys is that you're probably the most value-driven company that I can think of that's, in Arizona serving local people. I can't think of anyone that's more value-driven than you guys. So I'm curious kind of how that has affected your guys' decisions and what that has kind of resulted in with your different programs, from Sinagua Malt to your composting program and things like that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and appreciate you noticing that. One of the values that we instilled early on was to be a conduit for the community, and when you're a conduit for the community, you can't grow the way that craft breweries were growing from 2012 to 18, 19, you can't do that because, think about an electrical grid. You have to add these massive substations, and you have to train up journeyman electrician. That's the analogy I always think of in my mind of when you're trying to spread the message, you have to add that. And so we're really good at our 2 locations. So that's the first challenge, is really understanding where your governors, literally not your state governor, but your governor, like on an engine, would be placed. So you don't go past these points. Like for instance, 5,000 barrels has been our governor for a while. We're at 32 to 4,000 right now. And that's, to many small business breweries, that's a tiny amount. To many breweries, that's 1 week's worth of production. So, you can see that we avoided growth, unnecessary growth, past organic growth a lot. But finding those people that we're talking about, Luke, it allowed me and Patrick to see Kim Schoenig at the Nature Conservancy, to take the time. It took a long time to understand Sinaga malt and get it instituted into the state. Even not even talking about getting it into our beer. And she needed help from us that it couldn't have been us brewing and us, hands-on in the business. So hiring the right people allowed us to do those things, to go down to, I'm thinking like Pivot Produce down in Tucson to meet him and go over his.
Frozen.
Frozen.
Pat and I going.
You froze.
I'm frozen.
You're back.
Right after you talked about Pivot, you said Pivot Produce.
Okay. Pivot Produce and going to Tucson and working with Tucsonian companies and Flagstaff companies and getting blackberries and foraging for sycamore leaves and spruce tips. That's because we have the right people in place. So a lot of why we're so focused on people, so allows Pat and I to go see these things in the world, identify issues. It also allows us to look at 30,000 feet of our own company. And we noticed right away that the values that we instilled were to make Arizona a better place, right? That's simply said. You can say that stuff and move on. I think a lot of companies do. But we noticed landfill, where's your trash go? We're asking basic binary questions. Where does your trash go? And then we find out Recycle City, as you guys know well, you visited with us. Recycle City has a program that's the only one in the state of Arizona of its type that's located in South Phoenix. It takes your compost and makes it into soil that can grow new product. And so that's us working on our business and not just in our business. We were able to see things from that level that I think makes Patagonia very successful. Von Chenard, their CEO, was able to be on a rock wall and get inspiration. So I got to take this idea back. And that's where Pat and I find a lot of value in our, our quest to make Arizona more, I think it started as, let's make it more respected. I know there's a lot of cliches about Arizona, but now it's more, don't view this as your backyard. This is not your backyard. This is all of our backyard and the next generation's backyard. And this won't be Arizona 400 years from now. It's not how the world works, not how society works. It all crumbles, but Arizona right now has the chance to be a conservation leader. And so what we think our business plan is a blueprint to pass on. We also want to connect more with our governor, with our senators, and say, consider what our business has done to get here. You can mandate other businesses have to do more things like this. Those drives that you're suggesting, that you notice that we do, it's all about having a Justice, a Charles be, really covering angles that allow us to be free to go do those things. So I hope that answers that question, but that's a big part of it.
Absolutely. And it seems like, being that you're value driven, the opposite side would be profit driven. But since you're value driven, you found the scale that allows you to focus on the right things that are, based off of your values. And that allows you to, go out and audit these places, visit places like Recycled City, while other people in your business are focused on other things. And so, to me, it's incredibly refreshing to be able to drink a beer that's not only delicious, but know that it's created by a local farmer, keeping that job here in the local economy. And that adds value to me as a consumer, even though I don't necessarily know that farmer. The story behind it is incredible. And also knowing that it's enriching the community is something special. I think a lot of businesses are kind of shifting towards that mentality because of people like you guys.
Well, Luke, what you just said there, I'd identify you as one of our level 5 out of 5 customer. That means that you're consciously, you're consciously making a decision and aware that this product is actually attached to more positive. It's attached to things that you also find powerful and worth, so when you're drinking a pint of beer and you can actually look at the web that you're attached to, that makes you a customer that we're going after, and you're a hard customer to find. Or how about this? You're that type of customer is not as loud as the level 1 customer who just wants a goddamn beer. And so we got to play ball with all customers, right? But we like that, and that's, you'll notice our, bringing in non-ice and a climber out there in the world. What we're trying to do is get more to those high level customers that we prefer, because we don't have to sit there and go, here's why grain economies matter, and then level 1 customers like, where's your fucking light beer? And that's great too. That is great. But we prefer the Luke style customer, because when you come back, you're going to teach the level 1 next to you at the bar. You really are. You're going to teach that low level customer who just wants something to say, hey, hold on. Did you know that this company, if you saw our web, and we're working on this art now, but if you saw our web, if you buy a pint of Arizona Wilderness, you just bought Sinagua, they employ people over here who buy Arizona stuff over here. And then you bought a burger from us, Arizona grass raised. They have employees go over here. They buy a lot of their corrals are made from Arizona wood cutters. And like, if you look at all the recycled city, they employ Arizona people, and then they sell food back to an Arizona restaurant. And you look at our web and you realize that's a college course. And we like when a Luke like you come in and know that, and you identify with that. That means that we've done our job as the marketing crew at Wilderness.
Yeah, and I think that's an alternative way of marketing, where you're placing value. You're reducing margins in a manner that our COO would refer to us operating like a B corporation, and with that reduction of margin due to the responsible growth of the company. Because I think we can all agree that there are a lot of companies, even some in craft locally, that have grown at an irresponsible rate. They've grown rapidly. And with that, there's degradation of resources. There's a lot that goes into you shouldn't be growing that fast. You're sprinting to the finish line, essentially. But with us putting these, kind of governors in place, but like John said, you're creating this advocacy value that is undertoning what you're actually doing in action. You're now creating somebody who's advocating for you, right? They're marketing for you. And by all means, a billboard works in a generic category 1 situation of give me my light beer. But in the category 5 situation that we're talking about, there's a lot of, this could take years, right? For you to become that customer, you had to get deep into the back end of understanding to really get all of that. And that educational process requires time. And that's kind of an organic development. And sometimes it's meet you where you're at, because some people aren't ready for that. They're not ready for this onslaught of information that's very forward and complex. They may need a little bit of time. And you can put that analogy in beer, where a lot of times you have that training wheels beer that you put in front of somebody just to get their foot in the door and realize that beer isn't just crappy fizzy yellow stuff, and it's the same way on the value set on the marketing side. So I think it's more of a long play. And for us, for John and I personally, specifically, we have to live it first. And that's part of having this team that allows him and I the bandwidth to learn and live these ideologies before they come to the table in front of that team, so that they're concise and they're clear and they're understandable, and they do align with a mission that's kind of parallel together. So that's where even John and I personally, I know I have been through an evolution of learning and understanding our relationship to the supply chain and the world around us, and the cultural connectivity of our employees and to the ownership, and that takes time, and you have to allow that to develop and grow. And so there's some patience involved, and we're now at a more patient stage, I think, of our existence than we were, 5 to 7 years ago. It was a rocket ship, man. We were sprinting as fast as everyone else.
Holding on with one
I feel
hand.
like an analogy for us in many businesses is the Beatles. I think. Just said that my internet connection is unstable. You viewing me well?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
We can hear you good. Yeah.
It's the Beatles, like the young pop phase, playing to small crowds, and no one knows you, but you got something there, and then you go into this realm of like you're still young and not prepared for anything that's about to happen. Then you hit the latter years where it's like it's got to evolve. It has to evolve, and for you to move on, you have to write your Abbey Roads. You have to do those things and write Imagine and on your own terms. And Pat and I have had to go separate ways on things, and we've had to come back on things. But in the end, what we realize is the foundation of Wilderness is very strong. It's not a house built on sand by any means. And a lot of craft breweries, we believe, were built on sand. And your foundation is very important. It's the only thing a business owner should be. That's what should keep you up at night. If you can't pay the bills, things will work out. Yeah. But if your foundation is wrong, then why go to 7 years? You're fucked. Why do that? And so we have been able to come in and out and come back and realize our foundation was set. We have so many cool employees who come along Wilderness, and the ones that you've gotten to know, Conrads of the world, who've gotten cool opportunities and gone on their own way. But they were part of seeing that foundation, saying there's value in this. I want to stay here. I want to live in this house. And I've said this every single year, but year 7, yet again, I'll say it, next year is going to be better. Because all the things that we learned this year were so valuable. The things that I've gone through and learned this year are so valuable, and this is why life's so precious, and why I think the Wilderness is great. As I view us, I think the particular manner that we would be the best in, and I love speaking in natural analogies and metaphors and anecdotes, but I think that we are a sinuous creek going through a ponderosa forest. And there are other companies who are massive rivers carrying tons of current and can take big floods and smaller, but the sinuous creek is the one that has the healthiest soils around it, the one that allows the most, you can walk along it and get the most peaceful calmness out of it. And over time, that creek becomes a river. And so we're slowly adding banks and the roots in the soil. And I view that, and every time I'm backpacking, I see a creek that is something that I smile at and say, that's our company right now. We are we're becoming the Verde River, where it can take floods now. The massive floods. We can also take droughts, and as long as people don't fuck with it, that's why I don't fuck it up. It's as long as it's not trashed completely and dishonored. I think Wilderness will be able to be an institution in the state of Arizona for a long time. Pat and I do have some plans past craft beer. We think craft beer is the revenue source and the center, but we do think that Wilderness can be a lifestyle brand. And so, the next 7 years, you'll probably see some exciting things from us. And we're in this position of guiding a ship that now has an actual steering wheel and it responds to who you turn it. Right. So that's unique for us.
It's not a steering wheel like a playground where it just spins and the kid
that's
doesn't know
that's
it.
what business can feel like. As Elon Musk said, it's like chewing on glass, staring into an abyss, and you have your moments and your ups and downs and your animosities. But in the end, if you got the steering wheel and you turn right and your company goes right, you get chills. That's your proud moments, and silent, and there's no one around you. It's not when there's people in your building, because that's chaos. It's when you're alone and you go, oh my God, we just turned right. We hired a salesperson. We're literally going to have a sales force. Yeah. And that's because we've had time to consider, I think COVID's a blessing in many ways on our societies. We get to see that revolving door go.
Yeah.
And on the other side, I think we're going to have a new customer base that's going to say, I really want to rebuild the economy. We got to do it in 2008. And we saw some cool small business, laws and sustainability things that I think are valuable today. And I hope we get to see it again. I hope on the other side we get to rebuild the economy. and audit from the customer's perspective a little more too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so for you guys, so man, I just lost my thought. I do it one a day. Like I do these one episode, or once per episode, I just lose a thought.
You need
String just gets cut.
Yeah, adaptogenic mushrooms.
Yeah, cordyceps.
Yeah.
Downtown.
Reishi.
Right.
Wait, what is
downtown has well, right now, I don't want to get into too much right now, because what downtown was a natural response system to an entrepreneur to say we obviously have to grow.
Yeah.
Again, like the analogies of a ponderosa growing, it has to have trees above it to shade it. And downtown was obviously the desire to get our product and experience wilderness was there. We knew that a second location was successful, but based on our travels, we noticed that the more sustainable style was an open environment where it would be considered counter service, kind of open bars, and built for big times, and so you'll notice that downtown we learned a lot along the road from McKellar. I remember specifically Kansas City at Boulevard Brewing Company, Boston, LA, all these particular cities, Miami. We'd go and we'd say, look at how massive their bars are, their structures, and allows more people to come and enjoy it. And we engaged in what I call
highly averse to distribution, so we figured it was ideal to curate that experience ourselves with our retail locations. And the food was nothing. I mean, to shake a stick at you, you knew that you had something magical on the food side as well, so you wanted to bring that to the table in the growth element. So we figured those would match well. And a couple of years ago, we thought we were the smartest guys ever to do a 600-seat beer garden, not understanding that groups and large gatherings would be canceled for a year straight.
Yeah, and I think the hardest part for Pat and I is we got to see it shine the way we had seen it in dreams, maybe 2 times. So we were just getting to the point where, March of this year, just a few months ago, was about to be something that I think, the crux of our entrepreneurial career. We designed something, we built something, we paid for it out of our hard-earned pockets. We instituted the systems, we worked on hindsight issues. We did everything we possibly could, and here comes March, and we're about to finally reap the benefits, and that creates structure in our programs that tend to be more expensive than others, and then COVID came, and we never got to see that. We just didn't get to see that full sustained March to June 15th action. So, Pat and I have dug through the soil and climbed those rocks to find false peaks a lot, both natural and business wise. And I don't want to get caught up in the idea that we should talk about what we would have been. But what we are going to be is we're going to be a gritty goddamn group of people. And I like that. I think wilderness people should be gritty. And I think people should suffer a little bit, not physically, but mentally, to say, hey, we did this week in sales what we do in an hour on Saturdays in March. I'm not just saying that, it's true. And you got to go through that. And sometimes, the team that comes through that is just going to be tougher than other teams. And we think that the team Wilderness currently is just going to be a tough group of people, and they're going to be able to get us through what we really need to get through, is going from the mid-range business to the large business. One of the hardest jumps in the history of business. If you read Titan by Rockefeller, that small to mid jump is like a joke to some business owners. It's the mid-size to large. When you're going from 150 employees that we were at or are currently to the 1,000, those are impossible feats. You need gritty people in that office who are willing to do the dirty work. I think that this is a training ground for that. Not saying we're going to 1,000 employees, but we are going to have to move this to get more piece of the pie, to talk more conservation. That pie is power. And we do want to go to the governor and say, hey, we matter. Right now, we're just a speck on a radar, right? But growth will provide that. Senators will want to come in and listen to Pat and I because we've created 1,000 jobs, hopefully. So that's what this moment is. It's a false peak. You got 7 more miles to go. You're sweating. You have very little food, and you're hoping it rains for water. And that's the feast or famine thing. And I'm not afraid of it, and I think we're okay. The other companies out there, more power to them, and I wish them the best. But I will say that on the other side, you better be better than you were going in. And there's a lot of companies who I don't think we're at the top of their game, and we're riding a wave that we need entrepreneurs and breweries to lift each other up. We need the best. We do. And I hope the other side presents the best, and people come to Arizona and say, that's the best beer I've ever had. That's the best experiences in beer I've ever had. And not just, they have breweries, they have things, and I think that COVID can present that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think COVID actually did some good things naturally, and some overabundance of certain elements like festivals. Too many festivals. I mean, my God.
Which one? Phoenix Beer Festival or Beer Festival Phoenix?
Oh Lord!
No, I'm just the different iterations. They just switch all the words up, and it's,
I got to know cities like Copenhagen and Manchester and Miami like the back of my hand, and that's cool and all, but it's not my market, and it's not my love. I mean, look at what I've done in COVID. I think you get to see what I truly love, and what Pat and I truly love, and in the states where I want to be. And so it's amazing. Like, why do I know about the dive bars of London so well? Because these travel experiences, they just they're always going, and
what was
they were wonderful, and they will come back. But we'll look at this time as the time that we got to kind of rekindle our love for Arizona on a full level.
Sure. Yeah, well, because I look at that, like I see, first of all, I mean, the envy, right? I've seen you guys do the shit that you guys have done, right? In the Dead Sea and in Jordan. Yeah. I mean, it's awesome, man. But
Brazil,
yeah, dude, it's great. But everywhere you went, you took the name Arizona with you, right? And then, for me to experience, Luke and I to experience a couple of these cool ships, to see like the most respected dudes in the industry coming here, and now they're enjoying the wilderness of Arizona. So it's cool, man. Was that an intentional, like, hey, let's get our name out here, let's travel around and get the name Arizona Wilderness out? Or how did that all come together?
Well, look, there's an energy level that Pat and I have that's insanity. It's insane next to some other people's energy that, as I'm getting older, I look at them and say, holy shit, look what, I mean, we're basically, me in particular, was on a track to kill myself pretty quickly. So it wasn't just intelligence. A lot of it was just saying yes to a lot of things, but there is a value system in everyone's head. And if you were invited to a podcast group that was the guys down the road, you might go, well, but if you were invited by Howard Stern, would you say yes? And over time in craft beer, there's a lot of Howard Sterns. There was a lot of those levels of people. And so saying yes wasn't always negative. It did do exactly what you said. Arizona Wilderness has been in, I'm thinking of like the Porter Bar in Atlanta. I'm thinking of like, the McKellar festivals in Boston and Japan, like Picala, one of my favorite beer bars in the world, in Tokyo. Our beer is not only there, but people love the idea of the Southwest. We had wonderful times in Iceland. They treat us like kings in Iceland, in Greenland. And so these are things that are notches in a pretty unique business career, and did gain some respect. But what we do need is more Lukes. We want that respect here. And that's what we're focusing on now. Is we want to be able to travel in a couple of years and do it sporadically, where we get a lot out of it and have people go, dude, you were beloved by your state. And we weren't getting that as much as we thought we would or think we deserve.
Did that change did that change based on in the intent before COVID, or was COVID the thing that just kind of
we weren't focusing enough on our own employees and enraging their passions,
Okay.
So right now we can do that, and then we can have that same fanfare vibe. It happens here. and that's a great thing about after COVID is the travel has ended and we can see things differently, and again, it's like having a baby in many ways. You're forced to be at home focusing on something, and
you have no choice.
it changes everything that you do, and you're raising something. So that's what COVID's felt like with this business, and it's awesome to see it. It's been an interesting 6 years, but 6 months is what the calendar says, but it's crazy that this year's been so much. But we are seeing the consumer is, and including myself, when I go out, I get now that a mask can get us by, and we can go back out and somewhat congregate and be protected. And that's what was different back in March, where everyone wanted to jump off the ledge. It's now okay, this thing's here and it sucks, but we can live with it, and it can be manageable. And that's where we're ready. That's why we're ready to, I don't want to say the word attack, but we're ready to get back into major action, because this team is too smart to sit around on Zoom in Tuesday meetings. It's just too smart to sit around and blah, 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 blah. It needs action. And that is one downfall of having a smart team, is you better have energy releases. And so I'm hoping this season we can see that. And our 7th anniversary is Labor Day weekend. And I think you'll see some home runs from Eric, our head brewer, Ashley, our lead brewer, John Cheney, our warehouse manager, the Woodnote Center. Woodnote Cellars. You're gonna see some home runs.
Sort of a unique evolution on the beer side too, which as we have the wholesale element coming back, it's this multifaceted approach that we've never had before, and COVID pointed it out to us pretty harshly, that our reliance on selling pints over the bar was our Achilles heel in this situation. And so us being able to navigate and pivot towards beer delivery and get much better at building artwork and getting beer into package, and now having these different avenues, the retail, the direct to consumer, and then the wholesale side of things. But overall, with the brewery, having someone who's isolated, focused is specifically on mixed culture and in the wood production, with kind of an overall leader, and then someone who's focused specifically on pub side, gives you that, what we've always been. We've been the breadth of style. I mean, that's what gave us the best new brewery moniker. It's like breadth of style, and the height of the ratings. And so we've always carried that, and that's always been a vision that I've kind of taken and ran with. And as we built out our pubs and grew, it was, well, you could supplement other beers in, or you can make them all yourself. And we wanted to prove that, like, we were the do-it-all. We could make all of these experiences at one place. And so as the evolution of our brewing team has grown, from one member when I was doing it to now that there's like 10 people back there, you have all these different experiences, and they require attention. They require a lot of hands-on attention, and they're all batch specific. And so that, if you put that on paper from a manufacturing perspective, it is incredibly challenging to do all of that well. Generally speaking, you just don't do that. So that's what I'm really excited about, is there is a lot of curation in a lot of different focus points. And, you can come in and get any beer experience you could possibly imagine in one place. And that was always, it was very hard to attain. I remember learning about mixed culture beer and understanding that the storage and the barrels themselves and all of the time and the conditioning of bottles. And it was like, how could anyone possibly have any of this ever available, and where would you put it? And it was just this mind-blowing problem solving that a lot of patience was developed there. But even for anniversary, like, we're going to tap some old spontaneous beer. Nice. And I wouldn't even have said we would be able to do that a few years ago. I mean, it was such a challenging idea to pursue that stuff. So I'm very proud that, like John had mentioned earlier on our call with our team, the seventh year generally for a farmer is that sowing of the seed. You're now getting the crop that you've been looking for a long time. And I think we're finally getting that. We're finally reaching that point where we're seeing that. So all of that hard work and time and attention and investment is coming to fruition. So I'm interested to hear feedback from people, because I think that they'll find that experience is far different than right out of the garage days. And some of the experiences we provided over the years were so all over the place. The best, the worst, the sourest, the happiest,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But the most Arizona, and we'd be proud of that. If our heart and people saw that as, if you came with a C, like the Chicago Cubs in their hat, but you left with an A, then we did our job, and we just believe we're building an Arizona culture that is more respectful than what we think it was turning into. Give me what I need now. And it's like Arizona doesn't have the capacity for that. And I've seen it firsthand in the canyons where the water comes from. It doesn't have the capacity for what we're asking for. And those dirt roads that everyone loves to go dump their fucking stuff in and ride their it doesn't have the capacity for that. It doesn't have the regenerating power. I can tell you that right now. Fires are imminently coming at rates that swallows won't be around in the next 1,000 years if they keep doing what they're doing. And it is a concern that the most unique landscape on earth has binary people moving in. And so we do need to add some complexities to this frontal cortex that we've been gifted. And I think
the idea of preservation, even versus conservation, where we can take that John Muir strategy and just allocate these areas as wilderness and even expand them and do not touch them, allow them to be a natural space. Because like John is alluding to, like even the beautiful spots that people are discovering in Arizona, and we love that people are getting out, they're getting loved to death, and it's really sad to see that. And so, you can conserve them and regulate them and put fees and lottery systems and that helps. But the ultimate is to have it to be a wilderness.
Pat, and everyone on this room, not against psychology, but what wilderness can do is teach you that all that is a dopamine release. That's all it is. And you're looking for something that wilderness can't give you. It can't. What wilderness gives you is a lifetime worth of gifts and struggle and pain and blood and sweat and guts and tears and all those things. Wilderness is not made for a one-time thing. It's not one waterfall. And so we have a job in front of us. We're trying to hire people now and surround ourselves with the journey of their life is what wilderness is about, not that one-time trip, and get better at going out. Maybe
Frozen.
Another good point. Frozen.
Yeah.
Wild. And
hey, you were frozen at get better at going out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I want to teach people at getting better at going out. And did I?
Well, I think the first step for them getting better at it, living in Arizona, would be to read or listen to Desert Solitaire by Edward Abbey and adapt to that lifestyle.
Yeah, it's a dry, arid, harsh world out there, and you better bring your pillow, because it's you're not gonna find a lot of comfort, and I think a lot of people are taking comfort. One thing I was saying that wilderness can be as an educational source that you'll see in the next 7 years that we're going to institute more. But one thing that bothers me is the Boy Scouts have been ravaged by, I'm not sure if this point got made before, by scandal, and it's men not being able to control themselves, and it fucking sucks, because that's where kids are learning how to do this to be a good human. And the Boy Scouts are going away rapidly, and it's becoming what I understand is a little less outdoorsy and a little more like how to fit into society. And I just, that saddens me that little boys and girls can't go in the wilderness and be led by good adults. And that's something that I hope wilderness can reinstitute. It's a small brewery now, but I think what we want to become is influencing a 4-year-old to ask, what is a ponderosa tree and why is that important to me? instead of saying cut that down and create a house, it provides a home for 35 different things, and it's creating the soil to be strengthened so the water flows down to the valley where you live. I mean, it's something that we want Wilderness to be educational too. So, bear with us over the next 7 years. I think we'll have some complicated times to do that, but what to expect from Wilderness. You're going to come in and get great food with a culinary experience that I hope is unlike any other, yet still down to earth. And then the beer is always going to be another chapter turn in the story that you want to keep reading, like Desert Solitaire. I hope it reads that way. And we'll keep doing what we do best, which is what I said. And then Pat and I have quite a challenge in front of us to turn our company into something that I think should be an Arizona classic. It should be like Barry Goldwater or John McCain's, lasting legacy of this is who an Arizonan is, And I think we can push for that. And we're hitting our the latter years of the Beatles when they broke up and they kind of had their moments where they wanted to have individual spirits. I think Pat and I have done that, and now we're ready to attack on that game plan. So should be a fun future. We're ready for it, and the clock's ticking. That's how we feel about it.
Nice, man. Well, dudes, thanks for joining us. We're huge fans of everything you guys do, especially those fries with the cheese and the pork on it, man. That's that with the lassi you dad, man. That's like heaven for me. Like that's my.
I love it, man.
Yeah, but no, man, you guys are doing awesome stuff. I know you're busy, so we appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for asking the questions and come along for the ride. I mean, you're helping us do something that's nearly impossible, is to explain a story that it's like explaining, everyone wants the pearl. No one wants to hear how the pearl is made. This is a tough one that we battle with daily. So we appreciate your time too.
Absolutely, man. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, guys.
All right,
dudes. We'll talk to you soon.
We'll see you out on the Arizona Grass Raised Beef Ranch. Hopefully, I think Carly's got September or something lined up for a possibility. So hopefully that can happen.
Yeah.
Get all that video wrapped up with a lot of success in that.
Cows out there.
Yeah.
Happy cow.
Yeah.
I'm going to get my hat shined up, my cowboy hat. I don't know if you shine a cowboy hat, but I'm shining mine, damn it. So
that says all I need to know about you and your cowboyism.
All right, dudes. Later.
All right, later.
Well, guys, there you have it, the awesome dudes of Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company. They've got such a great message to share, and all of their products are just outstanding. Make sure to follow Arizona Wilderness on social media, as well as A Taste of AZ. Like the video below, subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you next time.